the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
To the BrockvMac Legendary Rivals podcast, and really super thrilled today to have one of the cornerstones of the McMaster program, and a name that comes up in just about every Mac cast that we do, and probably a few Badger casts as well. One of the cornerstone coaches, Henry Romanowski of the McMaster Baseball Marauders. Henry, how are you?
I'm fine. Mike, how are you?
I'm good. It's a beautiful Sunday, and probably we should be out throwing a ball. Are you hitting about 900 ground balls, right?
That would be ideal. Okay. But with 6 granddaughters and 1 boy, and he doesn't care too much about baseball, so and my son, to the chagrin of one of my sons, anyways. But I got invited last week to coach my granddaughter in basketball. So the other sport in my life was basketball. So
yeah, the whistle or the glove, or the I've heard about this infamous blue fungo bat that you had.
Yes, that was interesting. It was something I just picked up. I picked it up and I started using it, and it made a nice sound. Everybody was using steel. I wasn't a great steel fan, but still, we started out in the steel bats. I started out with wood all the way through. So when Ted Williams talked about hitting a foul ball and smelling your bat burning, I remember that as a 10-year-old. Okay, playing in the afternoon at Scott Park, just outside of the football stadium, burning our Tim Hortons field.
Yeah, so, no, that's, like the things that keep you as as part of the game that you remember, and we'll dive into that headlong, because I think for everybody that is taking part in this rivalry weekend and celebrating 30 years of both McMaster and Brock baseball, they're going to remember you from on the sidelines of that rivalry, getting into it with Matt Fletcher a little bit, firing up your guys and winning a national championship. But it would be really good for us to just catch up with what you're doing today. I know you and I have had a little talk about your natural inquisitiveness about artificial intelligence and doing a little bit of investing and these kinds of things. And obviously you've got a lot going on in terms of being a grandfather, but why don't you give everyone an update as to where you're at today?
Today I'm retired and overlooking, living in an apartment with my partner, Margaret, and we're overlooking the Lake Ontario. So we see all the ships coming in. So I'm retired, and I spend my mornings watching some finance shows, and then going to the library, reading everything I can on finance, and then going to the Y and working out, and then falling asleep in the afternoon. Having a nap.
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty sure that we had some, teammates, and you probably coached some guys that were doing that in their lecture. So,
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's, it probably, and I probably did it too. So
It's amazing, Henry. Let's why don't we start with, where you grew up and how you developed a love for, you got a dominant love for a couple of sports, but why don't we just start with where you were born and where you grew up?
I grew up right in the shadows of Tim Hortons field. And Tim Hortons and the shadows of the 1927 Commonwealth Games. So I had a swimming pool in my neighborhood in Hamilton. I had the baseball diamond, which the pro Cardinals played, and I had the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So the swimming pool was used in the Commonwealth Games. The football stadium was used in the Commonwealth Games. I think it was 27. And the baseball stadium was built in 39, where the Pony League, which now is the Hamilton Cardinals, played against Oneonta, all the teams in the New York Penn League. So I fell in love with baseball as a 10-year-old, went to the games, and I had a paper route. Earning $8 a week, and I spent 3 or 4 days chasing balls at the baseball stadium during the week. So I was making about $15 a week in about 1958, 59. So, and I was also sneaking on the field, shagging fly balls. So,
Wow, you must have used some of that $15 to pay off the security at the time. So
Yes, I did.
It's funny when you talk about paper route. Okay, so I read a book written by Nolan Ryan that this is a big part of his childhood too. He learned a work ethic from doing a paper route. He would roll the papers a lot with his dad, getting up at very early times in the day, and it kind of learns to extend your day a little bit beyond the school and the rest of it.
Yeah. The rolling of the papers, 80 papers every day, and then throwing them on the porch so you didn't break windows was important.
And I'm sure it taught you a bit of a work ethic because this is a recurring theme that we have gotten from Billy Newton and Don and everybody else, that you really work hard at everything that you jump into.
Yeah.
You can kind of see this. Did you have brothers or sisters that you played with, or
no? I was the oldest boy, and then my sisters were a little bit younger, 5 years younger than me. But playing baseball, that's where Scott Park came in. We had 4 teams, and I was on the team. There was a makeup team, the 4th team, as a 10-year-old, and we got killed. But remember, the police minor organization was really good. There were, I counted, and I did a little bit of a review, 800 boys between the age of 8 and 10 or 11 were playing in Hamilton hardball at the various parks in the city, on the mountain and below. So to win the championship, you had to go through all those teams. And that first year was terrible. I was on a last place team. Scores were like 20-0 for the other team. And that's how I became a catcher. I had a cab driver guy say to me, you're playing shortstop, but we need a catcher. And I'll show you how to play it. And he took me aside, had somebody throwing balls at me, and he'd be swinging the bat, and he'd tell me, don't blink, don't blink. And when you go home every night, practice this. Okay? Throwing your hands up in your eyes and don't blink. And that was a great, great lesson.
Yeah, it's amazing that, because that is a key part, is being able to just see the ball in through all the distraction. And I'm surprised coaches don't spend more time on that particular skill.
Yeah, they
these
don't.
days.
Yeah, they don't. When you just laughed at me doing this at
Yeah,
night,
no,
but I did it at night during the day. I mean,
now that's amazing. So you're 800 is an immense amount.
and I counted the players that made the intercounty, the senior intercounty team. Out of those 800, only 5.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's when you're talking about baseball and the success, and you think you're going to make it. Think about 5 players making it from the 800.
It's and I say this all the time, to play college or university athletics,
There's another.
it's only 6% of the
Yeah.
people who play
Yeah.
rep ball.
Yeah.
So, that's, you got to understand that it's not an entitlement. You got to work hard at it.
You got to work
good
at it. And the guys that do it, work hard, will get there. Or they'll play at some level. And that's what I really loved about going to Mac and coaching there.
Yeah, and I think we'll dive really deep into that. So, Henry, you're playing in Hamilton, and you go through this. You play on the worst team that probably you ever played on, and
Yep. And I said I'll never play on a last place team again. And I also said I would rather sit on the bench on a first place team than play first string on a last place team.
And I think that's a really healthy approach, which is, a lot of modern athletes have a hard time with that. They want to play all the time.
Yeah.
But the reality is you got to earn your time. And when you're earning it against better players, you're picking up so much, you're learning so much from other really great players. Yeah. And I think you can learn lots of bad habits playing on a bad team, as opposed to playing on a good team.
Yeah. It's discouraging. It's,
How badly are we going to lose today?
Yeah, that's exactly it. But so, that never happened again.
That's great. Why don't we continue with your baseball journey, but also through life? You get to high school, I assume, and have you started playing basketball at this point too? Is that?
I joined the Hamilton Y basically in grade 9 to play. I lied about my age. I told them I was 16 so I could play against the high school seniors, college guys, the Mormons that were always staying at they were from Brigham Young, and they were great basketball players. So I got a chance to play against those guys when I was 14, 15, and 16. So it was great. So yeah, that was great. High school, Central Secondary School, 4,500 students. Okay.
I haven't heard that number in a long time for high school. Yeah.
At that time, there were 6 high schools, and then 2 more opened up. And it was great. The football team, if you made the football team, you made the basketball team. You were something else. And the hockey team. So I concentrated on basketball and baseball. And we had a lot of baseball players at that school. So we had a lot of softball games at lunchtime. So it was great. So
yeah, this is the thing that people don't understand, is that softball in particular was equally, if not larger than
it was huge. Sure. Yeah.
And so was there this, were they trying to recruit you to play fastball and on top of baseball?
I did play for 1 year, but I didn't care for it. I'd rather play a hardball. It was but you know what? I played against some good players in my lifetime. I after my career ended, I played 1 year in the fastball league, which I hit against guys like all the guys that played on the World Championship team out of I think it was north of Toronto, Newmarket.
Yeah.
and I hit against those guys, and I hit well against them.
Oh, good for
I
you.
only played 1 year. I played against Landers and all those guys. They were the world champions that year. Yeah.
My uncle
and I think Oshawa had a good team too there. Yeah.
They did. The Oshawa Tonys were amazing. And Pete Landers, and we've said this on several podcasts, his son was a teammate of mine. And he was a pitcher.
Hell of a pitcher. Yeah, but you know what? Playing hardball didn't bother me that much.
No, I think there's a couple things. Fastball is really hard because the pitcher stands closer.
Yes.
And, when you throw a windmill pitch, you can make it rise, which is an unusual,
the rise ball. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got a different set of movement on the ball. Yeah. And it's just so hard. You're just stabbing at the ball a lot in terms of.
But you know what the pitchers forgot? A hardball player can hit a curve.
That's true.
And they would hang a curveball. Okay, it wasn't like a 12-6. It was more of a sweeping curveball, but it was a hung curveball, which you don't see major league players jumping on it now. But I would jump on that pitch.
Okay. Yeah, it's because you don't want to see the other ones, right? You don't want to see
exactly it. The drop ball and the rise ball.
It's so that's pretty amazing. And 4,500 students is, a big high school now is 1,100 or 1,200 students.
Yeah,
so
it was 4,500, 3 shifts.
My goodness. So you're playing basketball, you're playing baseball, and what's life like in Hamilton at that time? Is it are you feeling
it's competitive? It's competitive.
Okay.
The baseball, we paid nothing. All my career minor league baseball in the city cost me nothing because the police minor got the sponsors, they got the money, and they had a great program. And so I played baseball right from cherub to juvenile, and it was great. I mean, but 15, you had 15 on a team, and it slowly dwindled. The team slowly dwindled down from cherub to about 2 teams or 3 teams in juvenile. But you had 100 kids trying out for 15 positions.
Oh.
Okay? And in that 100, out of that 15 positions, maybe 5 were really open shots. So you had 100 kids trying out for 5 positions. And it wasn't fathers, there wasn't like fathers, I'm going to be a statistician or I'm going to buy you coffee every day. The teams wanted to win. The coaches wanted to win. They recruited. All right? And that didn't mean that you were going to make the team because I got cut 1 year after being recruited. Okay? And the next year I made the team as a last sign-on, the 15th player. Barely made the team.
Yeah.
That was in Bantam. Okay? And then you were always fighting to play in the Canusa games, which was a game against Flint. First place team would go to Flint, Michigan, to play against your sister city. And then you wanted to play in the OBA. So everything was competitive. You weren't playing for nothing.
No. And it's not like summer ball now where, a lot of times the team just stays intact and they,
Right.
Well, you have to.
And we were always looking for better players.
Yeah. No, I think particularly, I think that bears fruit in terms of, your career. We'll talk a little bit more about it. From an education standpoint, when you're getting to the near end of high school there, do you have an idea what you want to do, or are you?
Not really. I was thinking of going to an American school, Eastern Michigan, but you know what? I couldn't get into Mac, so I went to Mohawk. Okay, I went to Mac after I went to Mohawk, taking night school courses and things like that, but never did finish. But the basketball team was really good. The coaching was great. And as we would ambush universities, we also played against American teams. We didn't have the depth that Mac had. Mac had a fabulous team, and they had a great depth. We had maybe 6 or 7 players, but the 6 or 7 could do a number on people. So, and we had great coaching. That was the thing.
So did you have both a basketball coach and a baseball coach that were an influence for you?
Baseball, you know who all the influence were? My teammates in baseball. After I made that team, the last pick, I ended up with some really good players and smart players. Guys that were skipping grades and going to university at 16, 17, and they were fabulous baseball players. And I looked up to them. I mean, I went, oh, those guys are really smart. I better be smart around here, too. I mean, I don't want to look like a dummy.
Peer pressure always works,
right?
The
peer pressure was it was great. And but I wasn't a catcher in Bantam. I was an outfielder. I thought I was Mickey Mantle.
Okay.
And I wasn't playing. I was just a tag along guy until we had problems with the catchers. And one of the fathers of my teammates said, Henry was a catcher back when he was 11 years old, and he played in the championship game and won the championship as a catcher. He said, why don't you try that? Try him. So the coach says to me, would you be interested in catching? Get off the bench. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
But one of the parents used to drive me to the parents of the catcher that we had used to drive me to the games. And once he found out that I was going to catch, I got no more rides.
That is hardcore. The parents in Hamilton are next level. Boy, oh
That's
boy.
right. And so I took the bus. Okay. They thought that I wouldn't be able to get my way because I had to drive right across the city. I took the bus to every game. I was there before everybody just to make sure because I didn't have a phone either. Okay. So I didn't miss practice. I didn't miss games. I didn't do it. But they became my friends, really.
Yeah.
And they went to other high schools. And that was the great part of Hamilton. You could play on a team and they could be from other high schools. So you got together in the wintertime at basketball games, at hockey games, at football games. And, you know each other right across the city.
So, Henry, you're a catcher and you're kind of get re-dropped into the position, as a way to get more playing time. Did you start to, were you self-taught just in terms of technique and learning?
Yeah. You know what? Baseball game of the week on Saturday afternoons. In 58, we finally got a TV in 59. So that I watched everything. I read everything. I went to the library, read everything I could. Plus, remember, I was at that stadium watching senior players play, junior players play. I was working either up on the roof or I was chasing balls. And before the game, I was shagging. So I knew I was always looking at every position that was out there.
Yeah, I think you kind of absorb it a lot, right? Especially for someone like you that's got that need, that want to go dive in and read and absorb and, you're a sponge.
And then we played every day. I threw every day. The Dominicans say they threw as much. I threw just as much as they did.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of talk about inning limits and the rest of it, but I come from a different generation where I threw as much as I could.
Yeah.
And because I think you build up the right muscles and you get to learn your body too, right? Like this is another thing. So you go to Mohawk and you're playing some basketball, and at any point, are you taking an interest in coaching? Are you doing a little bit of mentoring of other players, that kind of stuff?
I took an interest in coaching in grade 13.
Ooh.
I coached a basketball team, and they were just ragtag kids, the junior basketball team. And what happened was these guys turned out to be great basketball players, and we almost went to the finals. And they hadn't won a game in 5 years. So I did a little bit of coaching before I went to Mohawk, and I had a great coach at the basketball level. And I had a great coach. So after basketball, I did coach some, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I did coach some youth basketball, and that wasn't bad. But when Mac came along with their ad in the paper, I decided to apply. I figured, why not try it? I mean,
yeah. No, we'll definitely get there in a minute. Let's touch more on your playing career at this point. At some point, you end up playing in the intercounty. Let's trace your steps there, because
I walked in. I figured I played juvenile and junior, but I figured I left junior at 18 because I felt I wanted to play in a better league, and I felt I could make the intercounty team, and I did. Okay, as an 18, 19-year-old, and it was great. I mean, now it was fantastic, because now where am I playing? I'm playing in front of kids that chase balls again with me. Now are coming to the games and watching me play.
Wow, and fans in the stands. And
fans in the stands. Yep.
Immense
newspaper. Our newspaper really covered it well. You got headlines. They told you. You kind of became a. Star. I think Ken Dryden used to say, once you started playing, you became kind of a star in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I can imagine in Hamilton, where as a community, they're very proud of things that are their own. They're very supportive of the Ticats. Tell me what that was like, making an intercounty team, and did you come in and were you a backup catcher at first, or did you have to earn your playing time?
At that time, they brought in an American coach, and they brought in I started out as a first stringer until the college kid came in, a guy named Marty Sears from Yale, and he was a good catcher. But I knew that I would beat him out eventually because he couldn't hit. He was a good catcher, receiver, but I was as good a receiver as him, but I could hit better. And what happened was the American coach, got fired after 3 games, and a new ownership came in. And Marty went to, he used to play in Brantford. He went to Galt to play, or Cambridge. And now the job's mine.
Okay.
And I hit well. I hit well that year and the next year. So that was a big, I didn't worry about hitting. I could hit. It was basically calling games and things like that.
And Henry, it was Wooden Bat League at that time.
Wooden Bat League, yep. Yep.
Lots of pros on the way up and on the way down.
We on our team we had 3 guys that played pro. A guy from Oshawa that Gary Newitt. became a police officer, and he traveled all the way from Oshawa to play in Hamilton. And other years he played in London, traveling every that is some trip.
It is for sure. And then you're having to go there and then probably sometimes load up and go on the road, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So we got in the playoffs that year. The next year we ended up losing in the 7th game of the finals, 69. When we played about 55 games that year, counting OBA playoffs, which we won the OBA championship, senior championship, and we lost in the 7th game of the intercounty championship on a home run in the 12th inning. So to Kitchener. So yeah, it was fabulous.
That sounds exciting. And, so this is, really where you're going from having raw skills to refining them.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like working with, what your philosophy is in terms of working with pitchers, because I think, catching is a unique position in that you have to think your way through a lot of things, and it's a natural leadership position on a baseball field. So tell me a little bit about what your thought processes were in terms of your style dealing with baseball pitchers in particular, because they are a different kind of personality.
One of the things that maybe I would always protect the pitchers. The umpires would miss calls and I'd get mad at them. Never when I hit, but when I received and I thought it was a strike, I would tell the umpires. I would get on. And I always believed in the fastball. The fastball was the pitch, but I also liked the curveball that went into the dirt, especially with 2 strikes on left-handed hitters, because they naturally like to swing uppercut. I also didn't like wasting too many pitches. Okay. I thought that there's, you get 2 strikes on a guy, don't start nibbling on the corners or try and waste. Go after him. And the other thing I said, when a guy's missing a fastball, this is what I learned from some of the older pitchers. When a guy misses a fastball, don't slow his bat down by calling a breaking ball.
Yeah, if they can't handle it, they're not going to be able to handle it.
That's right. That's exact. And there have been times where I got hurt by trying to fool a batter, and that breaking ball slowed down, quickened his bat, and he got base hits.
Yeah, it's interesting, and pitchers have unique personalities, right? You're as much a psychologist as a catcher as you are a position on the field. You're just managing these different ways of looking at it, and it's a performance-based position, so they can be a little bit egotistical, they can be a little bit nervous, they can be a little bit fiery, all those kinds of things.
The 3 pitchers that we had were pros, former pros. They played in the Pittsburgh Pirate organization. Mike Bust, who was 5 years in the pros and retired, played for the Cardinals and the Mets. He was with Nolan Ryan. The first year they were all together. Nolan Ryan, that big pitching staff for the Mets that won the World Series. He was on that team. He was drafted by the Cardinals as a first-year pitcher. And a guy named Trevor Madden, who played in the Atlanta Brave organization. So, and I caught Babe Beer, who played for Buffalo Bisons for 12 years. And he also pitched for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 58 and the Baltimore Orioles in 59. So I caught him, and he never shook me off which was unbelievable.
So that brings up a really good question. As we talk a little bit more about your playing career, did you like it when a pitcher would shake you off, or did you just want to?
No, I didn't mind. Mike Bust shook me off quite a bit, but we grew up playing right from Pee Wee on, and then he got signed. But he was so intelligent that I figured, well, what am I going to complain about to him? And no, I didn't have any problems with that at all. It was great. I also pitchers that weren't really fast. They talk about the split finger now, but I would tell pitchers to throw at that time. Elroy Face had a fork ball, and the fork ball worked like the knuckleball. And today it's a split finger. It's all you go a little deeper now. But I would ask pitchers who came in, young guys, learn how to throw the fork ball. It's your changeup basically, and if you can get it to sink, it throws batters off.
Yeah, it's really intelligent actually. I never, my career could never throw a circle change because it was just a very strange grip, and I couldn't. I would hang it and just leave it, and it would.
But it's a great pitch. Rob Pino learned that when he played first year senior, and he threw a great one.
Yeah, if you can throw it really well. But what I ended up doing was exactly what you said. I would just move the ball further back on my two-seam fastball.
On your finger, yeah.
And it would take some of the steam out, but it would sink more. So it acts like a changeup. It's easier to throw too.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Henry, how did So when you're in the intercounty and these kinds of things, how long did you play in the intercounty, and were there other things that were memorable of your career that you remember?
I played 7 years, and 58, I made the second All-Star team. It was basically, I was hitting really well, and I made the second All-Star team. So then the next year along comes the first Canada Games, and Intercounty was invited, and they decided to take the first and second team as the representatives in Halifax for the first, and it was a senior tournament, not a junior tournament. And I wasn't going to go. I was going to work. I was thinking, why should I go? But I decided at the last minute to go because the coach, Ken Benjamin, who I ended up playing with in Brantford, kept bugging me. So I played, and I didn't think I was going to play. And we had to play, we had to win and beat the Kingston Ponies to go to the Nationals, the Canada Games. And I still didn't think I was going to play, but I did. And I was hitting well again. I went to Halifax and I got on the All-Star team. I didn't think I was going to play. I was going to do the laundry for the team. Because we had two great players, great hitters. There were catchers also on that team. But Ken Benjamin told him, "You're not, Henry's my catcher," he said. "Henry's my catcher. He's going to catch all the games. You guys are going to play first base in the outfield." And that's what happens. We won the gold medal.
It's pretty good when a coach steps up and gives you that vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Did you like Halifax? Had you been to Halifax before?
That was the first time I flew in a plane and everything else. Oh, it was great. It was a great time. But the thing I watched when I went to games to see some of the teams play, and this is as a kid or anybody, you think you're not good enough. I was watching the guys in the bullpen pitch, and I go, how they were throwing so hard. And I thought, how the hell am I going to hit these guys? But it didn't matter. I did hit them. So it didn't matter.
Yeah, I think there's always that difference between watching someone warm up and then stepping into the batter's box.
Yes.
And if you can always manage to just flush what you see, when you're watching, as opposed to when you're in the moment, I think it's easier that way.
So I played on 3 teams that went to the finals and lost in the finals on home runs in the 7th games. I mean, Kitchener, Toronto, and Kitchener again. In the 7 years in the finals, it was great. It was good baseball, but I felt it was time. 25. I got a good job in sales, and I said, "That's it. I'm not playing anymore." So.
Yeah. So tell me about 7 years is a great run in the intercounty, and it sounds like you got to accomplish an awful lot. Tell me about your career at this point. You're working in sales, and
Yeah.
That's a unique world where there's some pressure, but it sounds like you responded really well to it.
Yeah, I became a salesman for Bonner Packaging, and my territory was southwestern Ontario, and I sold plastic bags. If you see salt bags from Sifto or Canadian Salt, I would sell the ice salt bags and insulation bags, Pink Panther bags, at great accounts. I then went into Chicago, went into the U.S. and sold there. And that was great. It was a great life. My sons can still count the cars I had, 25 new cars in my career. And it was great. I was traveling all over the place, selling plastic bags. And I was always working on a new bag, and I did develop a bag called paper. It was in paper. Water conditioner used to be in paper. And so took me 5 years to develop a plastic bag, which would retain the heat, wouldn't distort, the ink wouldn't come off. Took me 5 years, and when Canadian Salt and Sifto said we want to put our water conditioner in the bag, plastic bag, I said, which one do you want, the Cadillac or the Volkswagen? I had it. I almost got fired over that because they wanted to keep it in paper because they were selling the paper bags at 90 cents. And I said, no, we're going to sell the plastic bag at $1.25. And it increased to 10 million bags from 400,000.
Oh.
So, but they were upset that what are you trying to do?
They should have made you a shareholder at that point, Henry.
I should have had so that I was good. It was good. It was great selling. It was, I loved it. I was a little bit on the edge. I was a little bit like Clint Eastwood was. Make my day.
Well, you dropped a great nugget into my world there. Tell me about Chicago, because I've also had the pleasure of calling Chicago a second professional home at points, traveling to that city.
Yeah, I went there to Morton Salt all the time, and I would wine and dine almost every month for about 5 years, and it was great. I would wine and dine the people from Morton Salt, so I'd go into Mike Ditka's restaurant, Oprah Winfrey's restaurant, Jim McMahon's restaurant. They would take me there, and I'd wine and dine my customers. What's his name? Michael Jordan's restaurant. It was. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. Did you? When you were in Chicago, did you get a chance to take in a Cubs game or a White Sox game?
Cubs games, and I learned how to use the L train from the airport and go to all the games. My sons I took my sons there, and it was great. My family, and they learned all the restaurants. So when they were in high school, they took their buddies to Chicago to the Cubs games and everything else. So they knew their way around.
So you bring up obviously you're having a family at this point. Tell me about
Yeah.
your sons and that and your family and how that comes about, because you're working in sales, and that's, there's a lot of time on the road in sales, obviously. So
Yeah.
it's tough from a timing standpoint sometimes, but talk a bit about your family.
Well, I had two sons, 48. One tried out for the Ontario team with Brad Reason. And Brad was worried about my son making the team. Well, he didn't make that team, but Brad did. But it didn't matter. He, as a 16-year-old, he was there as a shortstop. Yeah, Brad was really worried because he was a shortstop. Okay. And but no, he was a good baseball player, a good hockey player. And my other son is 46. And he lives in St. Louis. He's a paramedic in St. Louis. His wife's a genius. And she went to Mac, nuclear chemistry.
Oh boy.
She's unbelievably smart. She's about 5 foot tall, but comes from Gaspé, very fluent in French. And my son lucked out. And Jeff, the older one, he's head of developing, town developer in Ajax. And he's kind of a lucky kid. He'd fall into a pile of what and come out smelling. But he was a good baseball player, very, very smart kid. Went to Trent because I said to him, you know what? If you make it in baseball, they'll find you. I said, find a school. If he had come to Brock, he would have been on your team. He would have been playing with you. Okay. But as I said to him, I said, I'd have a hard time. The guys I've got playing for us, I'd have a hard time you making a first string job.
Yeah.
Even though he was that good.
Yeah. It's, and it is something that was unexpected. I think you guys just had a glut in the infield.
Yeah.
And we had a glut in the outfield. Like we just had an impossible time in certain positions. And I talk frequently about our first year team. We carried 4 first basemen because we couldn't. There was just so little to choose between them all, and they were all great. So, Henry, let's touch on, before you decide to throw your hat in the ring for an ad in the paper and those kinds of things. Are you coaching basketball at this point, or you're not coaching at all?
I'm not coaching at all. I'm just concentrating on work. And at that time, working with my sons in baseball, I was a father that my son said would sit in right field and read the newspaper, but saw everything on the field and never got involved. I never got involved in baseball. They would come to me and say, the coach thinks is going to bench me. I'd say, well, then you're going to have to fight your way off the bench.
Yeah.
I never went to the coach, never second guessed the coaches. I said, you're going to have to just play, be better than the next guy.
Yeah, so many parents take the reverse philosophy. They get super involved and they're constantly in the coach's ear about their kids' playing time or whatever. And, that can't help, right? Like, because no one's going to, no one's going to do that in life. Someone's not going to phone your boss and say, get off get off Billy's back there because he thinks he deserves more pay. That's
Yeah.
not how it works.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
I think it teaches a good lesson to your kids where, they have to
Yeah.
achieve on their
Yeah.
own merit, not because
Yeah.
their dad or
Yeah.
their mom who,
Yep.
intervenes,
And yep.
So we've heard from Billy Newton and Shane Toohey that they take an ad out in the paper. They had no budget, so it was like somewhere in the Spectator they had a free advertising section, and you decide to throw your hat in the ring. Do you remember meeting those guys for the first time?
Oh yeah. It was there were beer cases all over the place. And I walked in, and Donnie was probably after me or before me, and there were at least 5 people I know that want. But I asked Barry Phillips, who was the head of I played against basketball against Barry Phillips, and I played baseball against his brother. He lived in Waterdown, and Barry Phillips was the head basketball coach. And I asked him, I said, what's this about this baseball team? He says, it's not an sanctioned sport. It's not what you think it is. I said, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just go to the interview. And the cases were there, Shane, and they were asking really good questions, tough questions, and I didn't answer them. They were really good baseball questions. They had this list and they were asking me, and I would say, well, no, I can't tell you what I would do. It would depend on what the players were like. Were they good enough to do certain situations, hit and runs, things like that? What could they, and what was the pitching like at the time? I'm not going to tell you that I'd be doing this. This is what you should do, but I didn't answer a lot of the questions straightforwardly. and that maybe irritated him a little bit, but I felt, I don't know what I'm getting into here. Okay. Okay. And they were good. And they decided that, they decided on 3 people. And I've heard interviews that we didn't have a pitching coach. We did. The third person, and I forget his name now, but the third person was played for the national team. He pitched for the national team, and he came in. And Donnie was made the head coach, which was the best thing that ever happened to the school and the program and the university baseball program, because I wouldn't have had the time to do it. He put it on the map, and he got the school, McMaster, to really support the program, especially Peter George, the president. And he'd come to me a lot of times and say, I heard you said that we're going to build a baseball park on the back campus. And I said, well, I'm hoping that you decide we do. And he would come and play catch with Hughes, all the players. He'd come out before batting practice and play catch. He loved baseball. He played baseball in Toronto. Peter George was a fabulous professor of economics. I had him when I went to night school at Mac, and he was a fabulous instructor. But Donnie did it all. But this guy that came in was complaining all the time. And I never complained about Donnie running the show or anything like that, because I figured, well, he knows what I can do. I know what he can do, and I'm not complaining. So Donnie kind of got rid of him. And we never wanted somebody to come in and take over because they never seemed to be happy with their position. With Donnie and I loved it because I would work them as hard as I could in practice. I would talk about baseball. I would tell them all kinds of things, give them some ideas, and Donnie would do the same thing. Donnie worked with the pitchers, and he would run the game. It wasn't anything like, oh, why did you do that? Why don't you do this? We had separate, I knew what I had to do, even in a game. And it was really good. We never argued.
No, and I think people don't understand that does in a baseball team more than anything when you have discord, when you have pitchers complaining that they're not getting enough innings, or people complaining about their playing time.
So Billy and Shane and Chewy really picked the right guys.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you.
Well, and you know, Billy is a unique character. He was my battery mate in Niagara Falls. And, you know, I think as a catcher, he would have really seen eye to eye with you, because for all of his, you know, he's got a big personality, for sure. But behind all of that is a guy that just really loves to compete. He is a really competitive guy.
Oh, he is a competitor, yes. And that's what he had. He was competitive. He wanted to win. Yeah,
and I think that you know, sets a good tone. And so you have some really also great players that, you know, you guys are coming in. They've been self-coached a little bit, and Jason Gwindon to a certain extent. But you get a roster that's got, you know, a Brad Reeson on it, a Craig Cooper on it, you know, a Doug Lunny in the mix. Bill is still playing, I think. Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts were on the players. And, you know, we've heard lots of funny stories about you working them really hard and hitting them a bazillion ground balls. But what did you feel your role was in terms of working with those players?
Well, the first thing I wanted to find out was whether these kids could throw. So I had a drill. They would line up first base, second base, third base, and I would hit a ball to third base, and they would throw it to second base, and the guys would turn and throw it to first base, and then they'd run around and rotate. What I want, and it would be at a fast pace. So, you know, you had to run fast, you had to throw quick, catch the ball, you had to make accurate throws. We would do that for about a half an hour to 20. Because what I learned, I helped coach an inter-county team about 4 years prior to this. I only did it for about 2 weeks, and I did this drill. In at the Hamilton Cardinals tryouts, and they never did this before. They were throwing the balls all over the place.
Oh.
Okay, these were our inter-county guys, and there was pressure on them. So I did this drill. I was fine. And then I did another drill, which I told them to get their inhalers. I didn't know how many kids had inhalers. Because they weren't going to catch 3 balls and that's it. They're going to catch, and this was the big joke after the first year. Brad and Doug Lunny and all these guys couldn't wait to see the rookies pass out. And I mean, guys were passing out, barfing on the field. Because, you know, it's August 15th. It's hot. And we would practice at 3 o'clock. And I didn't hit 3 balls to one guy. I hit about 50. And he had to throw.
Yeah.
So then I knew whether I had a player or not, or he could play that position. And so but when I saw the team play first time, it wasn't a good team.
Okay.
Even though we had those players, it wasn't a good team. It wasn't my kind of team or our kind of team. I didn't say anything to Donnie, but we needed better catchers, believe it or not. Our shortstop, second base situation, Doug Lunny was at shortstop. Brad was at second. It wasn't what I liked. It didn't gel. Outfield had Cooper, but he didn't throw that well. So right now, we had pitchers that threw strikes. That's the beauty of it. And when I say that, what's his name, Arms was our most important player that year, and Doug Lunny, Arms did everything. He played first base. He hit pretty good. He wasn't a great player, but you know what? He was a hard-nosed player, and he tried really hard. So, but I worked with these guys. These guys are good, but we still needed something else. We played well against you guys, but we didn't win all our games. We would lose by 1 run. And then it was end of September. I was getting really irritated because it didn't seem like they were into it in a way. It seemed like it was a club situation. And I had Doug Lunny there, I had Arms there, I had Taylor there, I had Arms there, and I lit into them at a practice. And I was shocked. Their heads went right down. And normally when I played basketball in high school, if your head dropped, you would get a slap in the head by the coach. I looked at these guys, then I realized they've always been successful. They're the oldest in the family, the boys. There have been goals have been set for them, and they've never had anybody talk to them like that. And I mean, I lit into them. You guys are losers. Things like that. And I stopped. And Pino was there, and same thing happened to him. And I stopped, and I caught myself, and I said, well, let's get back to practice. And I never yelled at them again. I never criticized them. It was always positive from then on. I learned a lesson about coaching, especially university kids. I learned something that I've never forgotten. And with my kids, anybody else, I've never forgotten. Don't criticize them. Don't put them down. Make sure that when you give them something, make sure it's constructive. That was a lesson for me, because I had hard-nosed coaches. Okay? And that was a lesson I learned, that university kids can really adapt. And from then on, we started playing better. We played well against Brock because we wanted to win. Okay? But you know what? You guys had better. Ebo was a great pitcher. I played against his dad in the intercounty. His dad signed with the Dodgers, and he could run like a deer, hit left-handed and everything. So, he came from good stock. And I told him that. I said, your dad was fabulous. And you guys had better ball players.
Yeah, I think we did. I mean, we really,
oh yeah,
first couple of years we were very, talent rich. The hard thing for us was more so maintaining momentum from year to year. You guys, because you had graduate school, and I think the players would be there longer.
Yeah,
we had a problem with turnover and any number of circumstances. But both teams end up winning national championships within a 4-year span, and going to the final every year between the two teams for about a 6 year period is a lot. I think, it's always hard when you're helping a program develop also from a club status. And the other thing that was really interesting about McMaster is it's a really hard academic institution. So you had some kids that were taking some really hard courses and having to really balance things. So I use Rob Pino as a great example. He's a great kid, or he's a great adult now, but at the time, he's playing, but he's also studying just really dedicated and very intense about doing all the right things. So it must have been a pleasure to coach people like that, I would think.
It was, because I didn't believe in long practices. Our practices when school started was at 5:00. I told them, if we go more than an hour and a half in practice, we're failing. And a lot of our kids had classes at 6:00, and they had classes ending at 5:30 or 6:00 too. So they would only be on the field a half an hour, but they would have to get their hitting in and their fielding in, and I was there for that. We had soft toss. Donnie and I basically pushed hitting and fielding. So I said, your class finishes at 6:00. They would rollerblade down to the park, and some would rollerblade back to the school at 6:00, at 5:30 to get their to go to their labs, whatever they had. So I always said at the start of the year, on August 15th when we started, I would tell the freshmen, don't get behind on your reading, especially the first. I said October 15th and the midterms come very quick.
Yeah, they do.
And I would push, say, don't. So if Pino would have labs, he'd come in at 6:00 or 6:30. From 6:30, he'd be fielding ground balls and hitting soft toss balls into the screen. So he'd get 100 swings in, 100 ground balls. And
wow.
and I would do that to every player that we had. And outfielders would field fly balls and things like that. But I said, we're only staying 7:00 would be it, because it started getting dark that time. But that's what we did. We didn't fool around.
No, that's pretty amazing, and it shows a flexibility that I think is different than the Brock program. The Brock program was rigid. We had,
you had morning practice.
We had morning and afternoon practices. And we were on the field, I think, 7 days a week, because we played also close to 40 games if we counted the U.S. games. Henry, tell me a little bit about one of the exceptional things that I've noticed about the McMaster team, where there were parents that would come to every game and were hugely supportive. And when I think of that, I think of the concept of family in the McMaster program. So you have Rich Lunny that would come out with a big, huge pile of Lunnies all the time, and Roger Reeson, who would come out to watch Brad play. Tell me a little bit about your interactions with the parents of the kids that were involved in the program.
I didn't interact that much. It was Donnie who was interacting, but I did interact with Lunny's parents and Roger, because I would ask him because he played on a great junior team that won. They went to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, out of Oshawa. It was a great junior team, which we should have gone, but
yeah, you told me the story. So I think people should know that you've been disqualified for being.
We were disqualified for being 16 years old. Mike Bust and I were disqualified for being 16 years old, and we played at Maple Leaf Stadium, which was unbelievable. With AAA team, and we beat the top team. Mike Kilkenny was the pitcher. Mike Bust beat him. And the scout didn't drive to the stadium No, he drove, but he came with another scout, and he left the scout behind and came to Hamilton and signed Mike Buse that day to a Mets contract. I was hoping he would sign me, but
and then you guys got disqualified because
we got disqualified
Prentice, right?
by Prentice. Yeah, because he said we were an all-star team, and but you know what? It was great, but it was great playing. We loved it, and Roger played on that Oshawa team. When I found out he played on that team, he pitched. He was the top pitcher, I think, on that Oshawa team. That was great. We talked a lot, and I could see where Brad got his coaching from, his dad, because Oshawa was a great intercounty team in the 50s. I don't know if you knew that.
I did, because when you play in Oshawa, you get a good history lesson every time you're there. And Roger would come to our games when Brad and I played together. And, because I was a left-handed pitcher, it's funny enough, Roger was pretty easy on me. He didn't really talk to me about try to coach me or anything like that.
No, he was a gentleman. He was
he was a little more coachy with the other position players, oddly enough, because I think he knows what it's like to be a pitcher, where you're kind of in your own head a lot of the time. And I had a pitching coach there named Ted Stone, who was amazing. So Ted pitched against Willie Stargell and a lot of these. He was in the Boston Red Sox organization and went to AAA, and he went through a year where he was 15-1. Probably should have been called up to the Red Sox, but at that time, minor league baseball did not pay very well, and he had a kid on the way. So Ted eventually decided he had a great job at the Oshawa PUC, so he traded it in. But he played for years, and so you have coaching that allows you to connect to the history. And for both baseball and basketball, Oshawa was really great. But having these kinds of kids in the MAC program, where their parents are coming out and supporting the team and driving to games. I heard from Rich that he only missed one McMaster game in 5 years that Doug was playing there. It says a lot about the character of the kids, and Don has spoken a lot about the character of the kids. Tell me a little bit about what you thought of not just their skills on the diamond, but you're starting to learn a little bit about these people outside of the lines of the diamond. Tell me a little bit about what you thought of the group of kids that you were coaching, and were you enjoying coaching? Because it's new.
I enjoyed coaching that. I can tell you, it puts a smile. I'm always smiling when I think about it. I mean, they were so good, but I also one thing that they took to heart was, I said, you can't play on this team if you don't play summer baseball. And we had players that, I think that first year, there were some that didn't play summer baseball. And I said, you can't play in this league unless you're playing summer baseball. You need that experience. Because once you get that experience in summer, because you're playing more games, you're throwing more, you just can't come in August and think you're going to be playing again, because the league was getting better. The second year, we had Ralph Scott. I keep confusing the name Ralph Scott. Ralph Scott walked in, and I mean, he was 125 pounds. And Donnie was reluctant to, he came in late, and he was reluctant to kind of give him the time of day. He said, well, we've kind of got our team all set up. And then he said, well, Henry, take him over to the diamond and see what he's got. So guess.
Yeah, I know what that means. It's time for you to puke there, Scott Ralph.
He did. He was passing out. He couldn't believe it. But first I asked him, I said, what position do you play? He said, well, I play in Burlington. And the coach said, I'm a second baseman. I said, that's what he told you? And this is where I'm looking for a shortstop.
Okay? Yeah.
This is where I'm questioning whether we have a shortstop. So I hit ground balls. I hit 100. I know there was over 100 ground balls with that little blue bat. And he was so tired. He was throwing balls across the field. I hit balls in the hole. I hit dribblers. I hit everything. He was moving. He's never had balls that much. And I walked over and I said, "You're my shortstop." Hey, he couldn't believe it. But yeah, one of the things I really stressed on the infield, and that's where Brad, Doug, and Scott, I made sure, one of the things I hated, and I hated as a catcher, I hated when I watched baseball, I even hated today, when I see shortstops, second basemen miss rolling balls that just go past the pitcher and not be able to make the play. The other one is the high bouncer in the hole for the shortstop, and he can't make it on the high hop so he can make the throw. We worked on that forever. Okay? Because I felt that every time one of those players gets on base, he can steal second. And if there's nobody out, you're in big trouble. The pitcher's got to throw extra. And that's where I took care of our pitchers, basically. Get the infield, the mid-infielders to do their job.
Yeah, and it with aluminum bats, because we're playing with aluminum bats at the time, you get a lot of things that would normally be dribblers back to the pitcher. That carry beyond the pitcher, right? So slow rollers and a lot of cheap hits from...
Cheap hits, exactly. And I never played with all my life I played wooden bats, so cheap hits were unbelievable.
Yeah, so that's really smart that you had them working on those kind of like, those soft
That was
toppers.
constant. That was every day. I mean...
So, Henry, also eventually you get an influx of talent in 97. Scott Hughes and Brett Gibson and some new personalities into the mix that probably take it up a notch again. And you guys win a national championship. Tell me about your memories of that season and a little bit about what it meant to slay that Brock Dragon and win a nationals.
Yeah, that was the one that was the one. It was tight. It was touch and go. It didn't matter. I mean, even winning, but Doug Lunny pitched a no-hitter the first game. But Donnie and I used to talk about baseball, and we talked about how some of these coaches thought they were major league coaches, managers. And we always said, you know what? They'll run into outs because they think they know baseball. They don't know their talent, but they think they're coaching major league players. So they'll steal bases when they shouldn't steal bases, and we'll throw them out. They'll try hit and runs that they don't know their players, and you'll get a strikeout and a throw at second base and make our pitchers look easy. We didn't have great pitching. Okay? We had guys that threw strikes. But Scott Hughes threw strikes. Dusky threw strikes. Lunny threw strikes. But they weren't overpowering pitchers. They weren't great pitchers. Doug Lunny had a nice curveball. But because they threw strikes, and some of these coaches, they pretended they were major league managers. And this is where the little test from Toohey and Newton came up. If you don't know your players, what they can do, you're not going to be able to win games.
No, and it brings me to a funny story that because we played them in the national final 2 years before you did, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's a rain delay in your national final game. You guys are down 5-1 to Laval, but Laval,
yeah,
for whatever reason, is doing some sort of calisthenic or something outside of their dugout that sets you off. Because I think you're
yeah,
probably just doing this to fire the team up, but
yeah,
I'm 100% sure because I know intercounty players. I played there and have tons of experience on both sides of the border. Sometimes other teams just give you something
that's right.
that
That's,
causes you to fire up, right? They
yeah,
slide through it second, or they say something,
yeah,
and that's all it takes to turn a game.
yep,
Um,
yep.
so were you looking for something like that when you guys were down 5-1?
Uh, no, no, I can remember what really happened, and I think what turned it around. Robbie Pino didn't run out a ground ball.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, now we're down 5-1. I think we were down too. We were to Laval in that final game, and Robbie gave up. He hit a ground ball to the second baseman, and the guy made a bad throw, and first baseman missed the ball, and then picked it up, and Robbie didn't run it out.
Hmm.
And everybody on our bench was kind of, oh, what, why? They were kind of down. I didn't say a word. I just said, Robbie, get out there and do the best you can. He came up again with runners on base. And I walked over to him, put my arm around him, and said, look for your pitch. And my big thing is, just like they're trying to get the Blue Jays now to hit to right field. I said to him, get your pitch and hit it to the opposite field. And he hit a triple, drove in some runs. And we started our comeback. Our pitching was still good, but we just had some bad luck. They were playing much better. And it didn't fire us up, but that was the moment when, you know what, I could have lit into him again. That's the lesson I learned. Remember? You're not running it out. I could have screamed at him and everything else. I didn't, because he knew that he made a mistake.
Yeah.
And we had great catching. We had great infield. We had double plays and things like that. And we had timely hitting. Cooper, Reason.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about. There's a player I want to touch on because I've already recorded a podcast with him, but Michael Grilly, who you took a really intense interest in and turned him into your catcher. Tell me a bit about what you remember about Michael, because I find him to be a very thoughtful and interesting guy, but probably a perfect demeanor for a catcher that is cerebral and thinks the game out.
Oh, he was, he came in, and Fortuna was catching, but I wanted him in right field. Because he could hit. But he wasn't the catcher that I could depend on for throwing people out, for blocking pitches. And we didn't call pitches. Okay, we did not. I didn't call pitches. Donnie didn't call pitches. They ran the show. So the credit is all theirs. Winning a championship and putting the fingers down and signals, they did it on their own.
Yeah.
And one of my managers even said to me, when I was in London, we were in London, he was talking to me. He said, well, why aren't you getting involved in the game? I said, I don't have to get involved in the game. During practice, we go over a lot of things, and they know what they're doing. I had shortstops, second baseman. They were brilliant, smart guys. They could run the whole infield. I had a catcher that could run. I mean, really could throw. He could run. I mean, I can't say enough about him. I mean, and my whole infield, can't say enough about him. My outfield, Cooper, all of these guys, they were all fabulous.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to coach people who are.
That's exactly it. Anybody can coach. We're not the brains behind it because they made it happen.
Yeah, it's a good bunch for sure. Henry, what what leads to you deciding? Like, do you just coordinate with Don, and when Don decides he's had enough, that's also when you decided to stop coaching, or what
No,
led to
I
that decision?
stayed on one more year.
Okay.
I stayed on one more year, but I was kind of I was done. Work was starting to work. I had to. Things were changing in our company, and it was getting a little bit tough to coach. And it was a younger group. There's still not a bad team. There were some nice kids that came out of Brantford, and they remember their parents remembered me playing in Brantford. I mean,
You might be on a most wanted poster in Brantford, Henry. For
their
all we know.
parents remembered me. They remembered a few of the fights. They remembered,
Oh, jeez.
and I played with some in Brantford. I played with some great players. I mean, but they were wild. They were wild. So they remembered. Their parents remembered me in Brantford. So it was time to give it up. I was. You know what? It was good. We were doing. We did a lot. Donnie did a great job. I mean, you owe it to him. I think that if they're going to put somebody in some type of a Hall of Fame, University Hall of Fame, I think McRae, Donnie should be there as builders of the program.
Yeah, I think they certainly put a blueprint in place that allowed these things to have some staying power, because there were other schools that launched and then went on hiatus or made it 5 years and then were done.
Yeah.
And a lot of them operated like summer teams, right? Like,
Yes.
That doesn't attract a higher end player who has options.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere. But it's good to stay in Canada because the education is better, and we've talked a little bit.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I keep saying the education, the Canadian education is fabulous. All right. I mean, I wouldn't. I've dealt with people down in Florida, got kicked out of condos because of it. Doctors, lawyers, and I wonder dentists, and I wonder how the hell they got their education.
Yeah, absolutely. Cracker Jack box.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they got their education. I don't know how they got their MBAs. I'm going, really?
Yeah, we know this because we started our program based around a friend of mine went to Oklahoma to a junior college, and his curriculum included bass fishing and theory of basketball, right?
Yeah.
And what I said to him, what is theory of basketball? And he said, well, we go to a gym and we play basketball for an hour. Like, that's not an education. That's a rec and lead. That's a, that's fun. It's, you don't learn anything though, but.
I played baseball with a guy named Brian DeMarsh, and he went to Eastern Michigan and then played for the Tiger Cats, and then he went to Waterloo. And I asked him, I said, how many courses did you get transferred from Eastern Michigan? And he said, they wouldn't even accept bow and arrow shooting.
Yeah, it's so these programs were supposed to be good alternatives to going and playing D2 or a partial scholarship to a D1 school, which is still expensive for Canadians.
Yeah,
and I think clearly impacted a lot of lives during that process. When did you pick up coaching basketball? Did this come
Oh, I did it right after I took a team to the Eastern Canadian Championship. We won the Central Canadian Championship. We beat Montreal when I coached a men's junior 21 and under after I played at Mohawk, and we went to we went to the national championships, and we just got killed. And I think because we didn't scout, they scouted our team.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, they scouted our team. They knew everything that we were able to do. I had some good players on that team, and they ended up they weren't good enough to play varsity that year, but after that they played at Waterloo on the varsity teams. They won championships. But yeah, that was we played in the senior league, and I coached. I was a little bit like Bobby Knight.
Did you throw a chair across the foot?
I did everything.
So here's a really good question for you. Who are worse, basketball officials or umpires?
The basketball officials in Western Canada, they were terrible. I got suspended because of it by a Canadian basketball, because I ended up with 4 players playing, and I took my team off the floor because I said, if you give one of my players, they all falled out. And I found out they were using second-rate basketball officials.
Of course.
So I've had my issues with basketball officials. Okay. I've had my issues with umpires. Yes, in the intercounty, where I took his chest protector and hit it, and it swung around and wrapped around his neck. I threw a ball over the grandstand in Cambridge. Called a timeout, but that was okay.
You must have got tossed for that, obviously.
Oh, right? Yes, I got tossed for that. The big Donnybrook and Christie Pitts, where I dragged a guy around by the hair from home plate to second base. I had a reputation of being a tough guy, and
well, there's nothing like a baseball brawl, and I've talked about a few of them because I've been in a few. Typically, as a pitcher, you just try to grab another pitcher, and you won't do much. But if you ever got hooked up with the other team's catcher, which I did once, the catchers were all right into it. They were swinging, and they were going to punch you if you didn't get to them, right?
My a very good friend and a teammate on the Canada Games team, 6 months prior to the Canada Games team, I threw my bat at him. He played for London, Rick Birmingham, and started a complete riot in London. And then we were meeting in an elevator in Peterborough to play the Kingston Ponies. And one of the players, and he's my pitcher. I got a catch against him. He ended up being my barber in Sarnia. Whenever but I kept one eye open and watched the mirror just in case he was going to cut my ear off.
Oh boy!
He ended up being the top pitcher. We sat together on the plane. I never mentioned the fight we had.
No.
But it turned out really good. It turned out very good friends.
Wow, it's good that you were able to turn it around.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's just been a very colorful career. So you wind up coaching in and around the time that Coach Graves does. And what do you do next with your life, Henry? Like, people will want to know, and it's about 25 years ago now.
Well, I was always, I liked sales. I was in packaging and retired there, but I always studied the market. Stock market. The stock market fascinated me from the time I was in grade 11. But, you know, it was so expensive to buy shares until the banks, TD and BMO, started discount brokerage accounts that you could run by yourself. Because to buy shares, they wanted you to buy 100 shares, and they would charge you $250 commission. That was expensive.
Yeah.
And so about 1991, 92, I started investing. The best thing I've ever done. Made more money than I salary. And I, to this day, I'll tell you, and I wish I had told my teammates, buy equities.
Yeah.
That make money. Make money.
Yeah.
And Warren Buffett, I read every book I could on finance, and I've invested wisely. And it's that little snowball that you start at the top of the hill, and you start rolling it down. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Make sure the hill is long and lots of snow, tacky snow.
Yeah.
And I recommend that to anybody.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of that by doing your own education on it, reading a lot and absorbing.
Yeah.
And just proof positive that you can learn several things in your life, and that.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's my schooling too. I had even at Mac, for those 2 years, I had great instructors at Mohawk that taught me how to. They were teaching security analysis back in 1968.
Yeah.
So
imagine if you would have started investing in 1968.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. But you know what? I'm not complaining. I always say, never look back. Never look at what you've sold. Just look forward. I've got a 13-year-old granddaughter, the first one. Every one that's going to be 13 will be opening up a brokerage account.
Amazing.
Okay, and the 13-year-old has already been in it a year, and she's making money. So
that's always a really good spot to be. In about 6.5 months' time, we're all going to be getting onto a field and trying to stretch our 50-year-old or 70-year-old butts into
78.
78-year-old butts into uniforms. But we're going to be doing so because we want to shed a little bit of light on 30 years of these two programs. Obviously Brad Reeson passed away about 7 years ago from colon cancer,
that was a real shock to me.
Yeah, pretty devastating. And on our side, on the Brock side, we have a gentleman named Todd Nye who was on our first team, and Todd had a freak accident where he lost the sight in his right eye, but he started as a catcher. Like he is but he was 6'5", 230 pounds, and had a long arc throw. So they turned him into a pitcher, and he just had the best attitude. He worked his ass off. He made the team as a pitcher, and then he has this freak accident happen.
Yeah.
But he's a principal today, and his daughter swims on the varsity swimming team at Brock, and he's just an amazing guy. So, we're all going to get back together, and for you, it'll be give you a chance to kind of see a lot of your players that you coached for the first time in quite a while, because did you make it out when they got inducted in 2018?
No, I went to Montreal. My son had just been transferred. They've been transferred to St. Louis. And that weekend, I took the train in to Montreal, so I missed that induction. Like I missed a lot of pictures. People say, your name is there, but we couldn't find you. But that's okay. I really regret missing that. That would have been great. But they deserved everything they got, and And I'm looking forward to seeing some of these guys.
Yeah, I think they're all looking forward to seeing you too, and it'll be a weekend where we can celebrate baseball
Yeah.
and life a little bit. I look forward to, we're doing a little coaching roundtable with, Coach McRae and Coach Lounsbury, and hopefully we have Coach Gray. They're talking about, what it's like. You're right. People learn about university-aged players are harder on themselves than a coach could be. They're pretty self-aware and self-conscious at that time. I was I was older, so I had less of it than most. So for me, I was just pretty confident, and but there's a lot of self-doubt there, and I'm seeing it as we talk to people, and they felt like they were letting their teammates. The last thing they want to do is let their teammate down or their coach down. And so a guy like Rob Pino, who I, spent a lot of time talking to, a very accountable, intelligent, professional guy, would beat himself half to death for not running it out to first base. And then he's going to try to make it better the next time he gets up.
Yeah, and he did.
Say anything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the great thing about baseball, and this is what baseball, I keep telling people, baseball is a great sport for young kids. It gives you self-confidence. Like, let's just say you're sitting beside a guy, I'm sitting on the bench as a 15 or 14-year-old. I find out he's having the same problems I have. Going to dances and asking girls to dance. Okay? I thought I was the only one. Okay. Or I'm having problems with my parents. I thought I was the only one. Okay? No. 5 other guys are having the same problem. Okay? Baseball is a great social sport. Hockey isn't. Basketball isn't. I mean, you don't even know football. No way did I know all my football. I tried playing football. No way did I know all my football teammates. But in baseball, each summer, my best friends were my baseball teammates.
Yeah.
I maybe didn't see them during the winter because they went to other schools. But when I did meet them at football games, how you doing? What's up? What's going on? Things like that. Find out he's got the same problems. He's not studying enough, or he's not doing this or not doing that. Baseball, fastball, I think it's fabulous for girls and boys.
Yeah, there's something sacred about what goes on in the dugout. Because it's also the pace of the game sometimes, because it takes time and there's big breaks, between innings when there's a pitching change, all that stuff. And you have that hour before games where you're warming up.
Yeah.
And you'll have some of the damnedest conversations you could possibly imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's, but you're right. You get much closer to your teammates because you learn more about them.
Yeah.
And you can't do that on a hot, when you're sucking wind and you come off of a shift in hockey, you're going to go back out in another.
Yeah. And then you're running home as fast as you can, or to get a hot chocolate or whatever.
Yeah, baseball is definitely magical that way, and it's so we look forward to bringing some magic to the field in St. Catharines in about 7 months' time. And, I look forward to you getting into it with Matt Fletcher, who
he's from Hamilton, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he played with my sons.
Okay.
And Jess Dixon did too.
Yeah.
Okay, you can ask them about my 2 sons. I think they all played at Mahoney Park. But the bench jockeying was something that was in my era, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, bench jockeying was huge, but I had the utmost respect for your coaches. I never, some of the Toronto coaches I had they were too arrogant. I mean,
We've heard that you guys didn't really particularly get on with Durham College's coaches
oh,
either. The Sam
well,
Dempster.
Dempster, I'll tell you though, he did a great job with that clinic that he
Yeah,
organized.
best ever baseball clinic for sure.
My two boys went to one of his university coaches that came there, went Northern Alabama. They went to his camp, and I must say he did a great job promoting baseball. But you know what, the community colleges didn't want to push that too much.
No.
But he was a pioneer.
Absolutely. I say this all the time, and I get that Donnie didn't particularly get on with Sam.
Yeah, there was something there, and it wasn't. Yeah, he could be a bit arrogant, Dempster.
Yeah, well, I played against Sam in high school, and
Yeah.
and you know he's a confident guy, and
Yeah.
you know kind of steps out front of his team to give his players breathing room, but he was always really good to me, you know.
Yeah.
And so
And you know what? And that's good because I think he did a lot for baseball. And Oshawa was a respected area for baseball. And I was surprised at some of the kids that he recruited from Nova Scotia, places like that. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, he really started high school baseball in the country and was a Yankee scout.
Yeah.
So I think he's got a little bit of that Yankee way. He kind of has a Sam Dempster way. So it's easy to misinterpret sometimes is that he's cold or that he's, you know, but I think, you know, and I did say this to Don, the hard part is Durham College starts and they're a 2-year college. Okay. And now you have 4-year universities, and McMaster and McGill in particular have graduate schools. So the players can play longer stretches, right? In Scott Hughes' case, he played damn near 10 years. So
10 years,
but you're losing your best players every 2 years in a college situation.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be immediately. Those guys are not, you know, they're having a hard time keeping up. 2 years in, right? They're having a hard time with Mac. They're not beating Mac. They're not beating U of T. They're not beating Brock. You know, so I think Sam probably was a little bit shell shocked, and then he adjusted, right? You had to get different kinds of players and build your team a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were prepared for the skill and the quality of player that was there in these programs that came on the scene. And eventually you've got like a Western that really builds into a good team, and Laurier. So I think it's just easy to misinterpret because the Sam that I know is a great proponent and fan of baseball.
Yeah.
And pretty classy because, you know, he could have given it to me pretty good because I beat Durham College pretty badly those years. And he just said, you know, look, eventually a few years later, he's like, you guys were just better than we were. And, you know, you're not, you're just not, it's the heat of competition, right? That being said, the Brock and Mac rivalry always cracks a special, gets our blood flowing a little bit. So,
how many players did you have from the Hamilton area on those teams? You must have had about 5 or 6.
Over time we had a whole bunch. So, but
there was a shortstop.
Jeff Knapp is a guy that came from Hamilton.
No, there was another one. Blonde-haired kid that Kemp turned into a real good hitter. He couldn't hit. He was an infielder. I'm trying to think who that is.
Yeah, you're testing my power of thought. But I know for sure we had Rick Bottomley, and Jeff Knapp were all very early. We had 7 players from Burlington. Matt Fletcher's another one.
Yeah, the Burlington,
But we had the big Burlington contingent, and we had 5 players from Oshawa. And then eventually we had a pipeline from Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario.
Right, which were good players there too.
A whole bunch of people that came from Windsor, from Tecumseh. So, you know, it kind of ebbs and flows. It's kind of funny how that goes. But I'm with you 100%. if there was some vision and there was some imagination at both schools. They're close. They have easy access to the U.S. border with the Queenie. Brock doesn't even have a football program, and oodles of space on campus. Both should have baseball facilities on campus, and clearly be, along with UBC, probably 2 or in the top 5. Because you can do so much more with these programs. I just think it's going to take some imagination in a new era, whether it's Coach Strongman, who's there now, or a new person that comes into the mix. And same at Brock. Coach LePage knows the formula. If they can step up, they can build that program that'll be here another 30 years from now. And
I mean, you could do something. You could even play in the spring, to be quite honest with you. You'd extend the kids' classes a little bit longer. But you know what? You'd make money. You got to know how to make money in those stadiums. Selling popcorn, whatever you got to do. But you could do it. I think you could do it. It's the basketball teams in MAC have done it. The football teams at MAC have done it. I think your hockey teams have done it at Brock, and your basketball teams. We've got supporters at MAC, financial advisors that are putting money into it.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think both programs should be pretty proud of that they've had some staying power and they've won and they have a standard. But, every 30 years is a good time to look in that mirror and go, all right, this is what the next 30 years looks like for us. Hopefully by having great folks like yourself and all these alumni coming together, it'll be a little focal point. Everyone can raise a glass and celebrate a little bit of well done, and then maybe look forward with some courage and conviction. And I think would be in a good spot there. Coach Romanowski, thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you one thing. Sure. Your song, introduction song. What is that?
That is a gentleman named Joel Stewart, and he is a Canadian artist. And I had the same thing from he's a friend of a good friend of mine whose son, his name is Andy Mays, who's the lead singer of a band called Skydiggers. And Andy's son played in the Brock baseball program, and Andy himself attended McMaster University. It's a small world that way. But I can send you, Rob Pino had the same question for me. I just said, I have an old school CD. I'll burn it. I'll burn it and send it to you. How's that?
Okay, that's good. Yeah. That's a fabulous song, and I think it should be a bestseller.
I do too. It's
maybe you can promote it for him.
I'm going to promote it for him.
Really, you know what? The tune is fabulous.
Yeah,
the words are great.
Joel's an amazing guy. He's a producer for the old CMT television.
Right.
So he does documentaries and stuff now.
So he does the country and CMT is country and western.
Yeah. So he was a producer there, but he also, obviously is a very talented singer.
But that song should be on the hit list someplace.
I agree with you. So we'll revive it. It's going to be a revival.
That should be played. That should be the walk-up song.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Henry. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon, and we'll see you in 7 months.